Hey guys, happy Tuesday to everybody. How you doing, Tex?
Oh, am I up? Yeah, I'm good.
Hello. Thank you guys for joining us on this Tuesday morning or afternoon. This is afternoon here. Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, depending where you're at in this world. Got a good show for you today. Daniel from the True Paranormal blog site is going to join us. He is joining us all the way from England. So good evening over there. Hope everybody's week is starting out good. How's your morning starting out?
Not bad. Not bad.
Good.
It's not bad.
Good. I cannot. Today's my day off.
It's a good day, right?
Yeah. For some reason today, I could not get moving and get motivated to do much, and I had a dentist appointment today, and ick. So anyway, always fun to start your day with a dentist appointment. But
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
man,
but
we got people rolling. The Finster, of course, is in the house, and
the Finster, a little Twisted's here. Hi, Twister. Yeah. Krista from Blondes and Booze is here. Hi, Krista. Little Patty, how you doing, little Patty? Pam's here. I'm sorry, Mrs. Pam.
I'm going to start calling her Mistress Pam.
Oh boy. Hi, Mickey. We'll just move on from that. And I saw Ivy Ramirez is here. So thank you all for joining us on this Tuesday morning. It looks fantastic outside here in St. Louis, but it is it struggled to get up to 30 degrees. It does not look as warm as it is, but it's a chilly one out the door today. So, but it is winter.
It is a balmy 51 here.
Wow.
Let's get up to 54. And wow. I'm just looking at the forecast. 54 today, 55, 60, 66, 51. I may have to go camping.
We have, I think by Friday this week, I think it's supposed to be up into the 50s or 60s, low 60s. Hopefully that'll get rid of all this ice that we have and snow. But then I hear the following week, Monday and Tuesday, is supposed to be highs in the low teens again. So
we're gonna get another shot of it. This of course just in time for the weekend. We're looking at lows in the teens and highs in the 30s, and so maybe
I saw one of the days I saw the forecast, the low is like 2 or 1, something like that. I'm like, that's a little chilly. But
the coldest I've ever been camping in was it 18 below.
Holy cow. That's a little chilly. I don't think I can handle that.
That was when I was in the service.
Yeah, that's a little too cold for me to be camping. So,
and that was in a what they call a pup tent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just all it is. You get shelter halves, and it's canvas, but it's just 2 pieces of canvas.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, no floor.
Mm-hmm.
And but I got to tell you, the cold weather sleeping bags that the military gives you are aces because.
Yeah, I bet. I don't. Yeah, they would have to be if you're sitting out there in 18 below. That's no fun. That's no fun. When it's gonna be warm? September. You see what I did there? So make sure that you get your. I mean, it won't be hot. It'll be probably 70s for a high, somewhere in there. Although we've been known to have 90s in September here. But this is going to be September 19th and 20th out at the Eagleton Civic Center out in Richmond, Missouri, which is out near Kansas City. We have a fantastic lineup. Let me make sure I get the right slide up. Here it is. So speakers, we have Greg Ogles, Haunted Souls and Haunted Garage. Let's see, Ron Murphy, Ann Celine, Dr. Dean Bertram, Will Lunsford, Heather Mosier, Josh Hurd, Sir Bryden Bowden, and Miguel Ramirez are all going to be speaking at this conference. Actually, Miguel's going to be speaking on Friday during the meet and greet.
Friday.
Everybody else is going to be on Saturday. Special guests include, is that the right one? Yeah. Not all pictured on here, but Ken Gerhardt, Dana Stricker, Brent Thomas, Ryan Edwards, Mike Familiant, Christopher Garantano, Dave Glidden, and Linda Eastburn are all going to be there as special guests. So come on out, meet them. Marilyn Bass is going to be doing a gallery reading after the conference on the Saturday. That is going to be in between the conference and the ghost hunt, which is already sold out. So it's going to be a fantastic night, weekend.
Yes. Very busy weekend. And don't forget the film coming on Friday. Did you say that?
I did not say that. So that's Christopher Garantano's film, right?
Yes.
Yeah. He will have a film on Friday night. And all this is sponsored by Doug Hychek, producer of Monster Quest, Hanger One Publishing, Curious Realms, and Para with the Normal. So thank all of our sponsors. It's going to be an awesome time. So make sure that you get your tickets. Unfortunately, like I said, the Ghost Hunt is sold out. So, I mean, that's going to be fantastic. So, all right, we're going to bring up Daniel here as soon as I can figure out my way over that way. Hey, Daniel, how you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you.
Welcome to America for the day.
Yes.
And you're over. Where are you located at?
Near Manchester, in England.
Oh, nice. I'm sure the weather is warmer there than it is here. Maybe some rain, I'm thinking.
There's been a bit of rain. I mean, we've had snow the past week or so. So it has been cold for us. I don't know how cold it gets over where you are, but yeah, it has been pretty cold for us.
Wow. I didn't realize it snowed much there.
It doesn't. It's a rarity these days for there to be snow. So yeah, the last week just thin-ish layer of snow with lots of ice everywhere. It's caused all sorts of problems with public transport and whatnot. So,
you know, I don't mind the snow one bit, but you know, that ice, once you get that ice mixed in there, it is no fun. You're not going to find me out on any streets. I'll be sitting my butt on the couch upstairs with a fire in the fireplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I've wanted to have you on here for a little bit, and I just got around to asking you. Here is your blog site, I guess, or website, the True Paranormal .blogspot or blogspot.com. Some very interesting blogs that you have. You can also find them on my Facebook page. It's really interesting topics that you cover. Let's talk about your blogs first. How did you get into doing stuff like that?
So with the actual with the database, it's something that's kind of come up over a fair few years. So with myself, my interest in the paranormal, that stems from when I was much younger, so just growing up. Because in the UK, I think it was 2002-ish, Most Haunted first aired on TV, which was a big thing in the UK. I don't know how big they are over in America, but from what I found out, I'd compare them probably to something like, you know, Zach Baggins or Ed and Lorraine Warren, that kind of significance. So it was early days of TV, you know, everyone was going mental over it. My dad was a huge fan. So we'd often have that on the TV. So I was about 5 years old at the time that they first aired. But the house I grew up in was believed to be haunted because when I was young, my dad's mum passed away. So that was straight away, oh, the house is haunted by her while I was growing up. With my parents saying all sorts of unexplained things happening in the house with, footsteps and things like that happening. I personally don't remember ever experiencing that kind of thing, but my mum, dad, and sister were all like, "Oh yeah, the house is definitely haunted. Like we've experienced all sorts of stuff." My mum's told me an experience where my dad was out at work, me and my sister were young at the time, and we were asleep, and my mum was in her bedroom, and she'd heard footsteps coming up the stairs, and her mind immediately went to someone's broken into the house. They're going to go to the kids' rooms first. I need to do something, because she was that convinced by the sounds. And then she went out, no one there at all. She looked around the house, no evidence of anyone having broken in or anything like that. So that's one experience that she has told me about what they'd experienced in the house when I was younger. So that already gave me interest in the paranormal. And then as I grew older, I then just kind of binged all the most haunted episodes on YouTube because I was so interested by it all. And I just tried where I could to like call out at various places, to go to places in the town I grew up in, which were rumored to be haunted, and to see if I could experience anything. And I didn't experience anything when growing up. But so then the interest in the paranormal kind of disappeared, and then it came back a lot fairly like within the last few years, because I've got an uncle who is very interested in the paranormal, so ghosts, aliens, anything like that he's very into. And he saw a group live streaming on Facebook, which was the Ghosts of Britain group. So he shared me the link and was like, "Oh, what do you think of this? Do you think they're legitimate or anything like that?" So I watched it, and it was very interesting because I was very used to the most haunted way of investigating, right, where it's just a team of people, possibly a psychic there, and they're just calling out with no equipment, maybe a K2 meter. But the people I was watching, so the Ghost of Britain group, I saw them using cat balls as devices. I saw them using a touch-activated light-up bear as a device, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then I watched more of their live streams, and I could see these things, which I wasn't familiar with as being paranormal devices, interacting for seemingly no reason. So the cat balls lighting up without being touched, the bear falling over. And then I started to get questions about, oh, well, why is the bear falling over? Does it have a battery pack on the back? Is it falling over because of weight distribution, things like that? And like, how easy is it to set off these things with vibrations just naturally? So then I bought these bits of equipment for myself. So I bought the cat balls, I bought the bear, I found out where they got them from. And that's what got me into investigating for myself. And also with apps as well. I got the Spirit Talker app because I was intrigued by that, because I could see them using it. I was like, well, is there some sort of pattern to it all? Is it hearing what they're saying and just throwing out what they're saying back at them, kind of thing? So I went through all of that and tried to investigate all that. And that's kind of what started me on the path of writing the articles, because I saw flaws in modern paranormal investigating. Now, granted, I may have just been looking at the wrong teams. I probably was looking at the wrong teams. But I could see a big criticism I had was that people weren't analyzing the results. There was no written aspect to paranormal investigating. It was all very much so, well, we're going to film a live stream and that's the end of it. We're now moving on to the next thing. We're going to film a live stream. And people weren't comparing to previous live streams. They weren't discussing across, like, oh, I've experienced this here and this is something I've experienced over in this place as well. There was no cross-referencing between what they were doing. It was very much so like each investigation was one and done. It's kind of like it never happened kind of thing. So I wanted to try and show, look, there is analysis that you can do. So with the word lists from Spirit Talk, a big positive of that app, regardless of whether or not it's real or fake, because I still don't completely know myself, is that it saves each word list generated. And not only does it save each word list, but it timestamps that when each word was said. So it tells you when the investigation started. So when the app started throwing out random words, it also tells you each timestamp for the random words. So then I was like, oh, that's good because that's potential, because that means you can look at the gaps between each word spoken, and you can see if there may not necessarily be a pattern amongst the words, but there could be a pattern between the time gaps. So oversimplification, but there might be 5 minutes between each word spoken. If it takes it 5 minutes to say each word, then that's a pattern, and that's something like that the app is programmed to do, which indicates a little bit that it could very well be fake. So I started looking into that. So a few of the early articles are word list analysis, which is quite boring to read through, but that's something where it's the analysis side of paranormal investigation, which you don't see. But then over time, I ended up with way too many word lists to analyze and not much time. I was running out of space on my devices, etc.
Yeah.
So I decided to move more so into researching locations, because I know there's a lot of miscommunication out there about haunted locations, because there are various teams out there who go to a location and they will make up a history about this location, or they'll make up hauntings, things like that. So I wanted to try and do these articles to clear up any misinformation. So I think one of the first articles I did was about the Pendle Witches, because witchcraft, etc., is one of those subjects which they're just innocent women. So that's one of those where stereotypically you think, oh, they put spells on people and all that lot, but really it's a lot more tragic than that. So that's one of the first articles I did, and since then I've kind of done all sorts of things, and I've gone from the investigations more so into research and into just writing these articles to try and clear up as much as possible about where there could be misinterpretation and misinformation. And quite often you'll find in the articles, because not only do I want to write the true things, but I also want to point out where the misinformation is. So I will say, this is probably the true thing. However, I've also found this information as well, which may exist for these reasons, but that's probably not true. So that's one thing that I try and do with the articles.
Now, getting back to the TV shows that you used to watch, what, or I don't know if you still watch them, what are your thoughts on those? Me personally, I watch like the beginning part of them nowadays just for the history. But when they go into their lockdown or their investigations and stuff, they kind of lose me, because they're like, oh my God, just absolutely freaking out on things. And, whether or not it's staged or not, it just, doesn't work for me. What are your thoughts on those?
I agree with you there. So a big reason why my dad loved Most Haunted was because of the psychic Derek Akora that they had on there, who would get possessed every single episode and would just over the top be possessed kind of thing. And he loved that. He laughed his head off all the time to that kind of thing. So that's why I watched it. Also with Yvette, who is the host of it, screaming all the time and doing what you just described. So that's kind of what had introduced me to Most Haunted. But in terms of whether or not that team is legitimate, I think half of it is legitimate. So with these teams, just in general, at the end of the day, they are going to haunted locations. Therefore, they could capture legitimate things on camera. You just don't know what is and isn't, because, like you say, when they're screaming and shouting and overacting in some cases, that really dampens anything that might be true, because you're like, oh, well, if they're doing all of that, then of course they've staged all of this other stuff as well, which isn't necessarily the case. And that's why at the start of 2023, I did 5 or 6 articles discussing the Most Haunted team, and I did a big analysis on it, because I wanted to look at them in a way which I hadn't seen anyone do before. Because again, this is back when I was being very analytical, looking at the numbers side of things. So I've seen people debunk various teams by looking at the footage and going, oh, look, you can see them stomp their foot or hit a wall or anything like that. But I hadn't seen anyone do it in a numerical way where it seems quite decisive, because whenever you point out an action that someone's doing, there's always that little bit of, but maybe they didn't do it. Maybe it just looks like they did that. So Most Wanted, they did a big investigation for Halloween, where they investigated a number of different places which were all within close proximity. So it was a big kind of, I think they marked it as a Pendle Hill investigation, but it wasn't actually on the hill. It was near to it. And so I looked at that, and I looked at where, like, the pairings of each team member in these locations, because they swapped it up as well. And I was like, right, how much activity is each team member getting in which place? So I had a look at that kind of thing. So, like, in one of the places, you had extremely high amounts of activity when one or two particular team members were there. But then when other team members were there, the activity dipped. And it was very interesting because that analysis determined that there were two team members which naturally, it seems, have very high activity wherever they go. And then one was kind of in the middle, and then the other two was very low wherever they went. So it just raised questions then of, why is the team, because it's clearly a trend that these two particular team members have high activity wherever they go. Why is the team not investigating that? Because it's obvious. And the only answer really is they're not investigating it, probably because those two are faking things. So the outcome of that, the conclusion was those two are faking things. The middle one might be aware of the fakery, but might not be faking. And then the other two, even with one of them, I thought one of them may very well have been subtly saying about the other two faking things, because there were certain lines that they were saying within the episode where I was like, that seems like a very sneaky way of kind of trying to call out these people for faking. So that was very interesting. But yes, that's my view of these programs. I think it's hard to tell, but whenever there's overacting, I think that they're probably faking things, or at least one of the team members will be faking things.
And I get it that it's for TV, for ratings, and for stuff like that. But I mean, come on, you've been on the air for 20 some odd years. I mean, seeing things like a shadow person shouldn't freak you out that much.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I've found that finding YouTube channels that have investigations and stuff on it seem a lot more down to earth and more real, I guess.
Yeah. You can find some which are very down to earth on YouTube.
Yeah. So I'm looking at your list of all your blogs that you've had. Robert the Doll. There was a cave in there. Do you have? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. If you go to his website, there it is right here. Thank you, Pam. The True Paranormal Blogspot.com. All kinds of very, very interesting things. Do you have one that maybe stands out to you that is your favorite?
So I don't really have a favorite. I find articles, like when it's to do with the people, so James Randi and Harry Houdini are two, which my mind straight away goes to. Same with like Rasputin, because it's always interesting to learn about people who have been involved in the paranormal, especially from a while ago. So I'd recently done about the Fox sisters, and it's always interesting to see how they've ended up in the paranormal, and not necessarily career all the time, but kind of their career path through it. And it's like with the Rasputin article, for instance, same with the Crowley article, both I think I reached similar conclusions to, which from the research that I did, unless I was missing something, they both seemed to be misunderstood. Like the Hellfire Caves that you briefly saw, it's a location where it seems like the media have kind of grabbed hold of it, and just public perception has grabbed hold of that place or those people and twisted it into something else. And so you get this mythology build up, potentially with Robert the Doll as well. That was one of the things where I questioned with Robert the Doll about how that could have just stemmed from the doll possibly being an excuse of a child whenever they misbehaved. And then because they stuck with it, and even through adulthood, they adulthood, they stuck through it with the, oh, it was the doll that did it logic. It just kind of got passed on and passed on and passed on until everyone suddenly believing what could have just been the story of a child. And like with the Hellfire Caves, when there were rumors about what the club in there could have been doing, because they compared it to the original Hellfire Club in their activities, there was a local priest who said that whenever he went past it, it just felt evil, and when he went in there, it just felt wrong. And as a result, the media grabbed hold of that. It was in newspaper articles. It just became this huge kind of media storm type thing of this is an evil place, when really it could very well have just been misunderstood. And that's quite often the case, I think, with a lot of the spookier things, that they're all stem from somewhere. So it's always interesting to find out where exactly they stem from.
Now, what leads you to these topics? I mean, do you just kind of search for, like, let's say Robert the Doll or the Hellfire Caves and say, oh, that looks like something pretty interesting, or do you have you seen it investigated on TV or something? What leads you to doing the research on these?
So with the locations, every Monday I aim to publish a location article. So for that one, because there are so many haunted locations all around the world, at the moment, the method of choosing which one is next is by going through every single most haunted episode to see where they've investigated, because in theory, they should be investigating the really haunted places. And then that means that I'm not going to have repetition with thinking I've covered somewhere but I've not covered it, or the other way around. Mm-hmm. So that's how I determine the locations. And I don't watch the episodes of Most Haunted beforehand. Any source which says Most Haunted, I do not look at, because I'm like, no, I'm not trusting that work there, the team, at all on anything that they've investigated there. And I've gone purely just the history and what other people have said about the hauntings. And then for the Fridays, I am for this year going to format them a little bit more, because they were always just something random. So through last year, so like I said, I've done Crowley, Rasputin, Jason Hawes, Robert the Doll, Annabelle, things like that. So the Djinn as well. So there were certain topics I was aware of where I was like, I should probably cover this. If I want this database to be a big thing, there are certain topics which I know of, which people will probably also know vaguely about, but they'll expect to find it on here. Which is why one of the first ones I covered for the Friday was Annabelle, because that's a huge topic. So that's why I did those ones. But now I'm going to try and format it a little bit more, so that there are 4 different categories. So paranormal influences. So that is, people such as Harry Houdini, anyone involved in the paranormal. Paranormal experiences. You've got paranormal artifacts, and you have spirit types. So each Friday of a month you will get one of those. So like the first Friday might be a paranormal influence, the second Friday paranormal artifact, that kind of thing. So yeah, and then I just search Google for something akin to that kind of topic.
Now it's kind of funny, a little bit off topic here. Kind of funny that you mentioned Rasputin. Somebody sent me a text while we were on, said, this guy looks like Rasputin. I
have had that before. The 3 common ones: Rasputin, Hagrid, and Jesus. They are the 3 common ones.
I could see Rasputin. Hagrid, I don't see that. And Jesus, okay.
Yeah.
Tex, you're muted, by the way. I don't know if you knew that you were muted. Okay. You do investigations as well, right?
So I haven't investigated since kind of the end of 2023.
Why haven't you investigated? You told us the story backstage, and it's a fascinating story.
Letting you ask me about that.
I couldn't remember how I got into it.
No, I couldn't either. But yeah, a couple of reasons. The boring reason is about the word lists. So I did, end up with way more word lists than I did time to analyze them. And the whole point of doing those is I wanted to analyze it. But the interesting reason is towards the end of 2023, I decided to investigate the 28-day cycle, which is a theory that was proposed by Ed and Lorraine Warren, which said that if you investigated a haunted location for 28 days in a row, the barriers between the worlds would kind of break down and you'd end up with fluent spirit communication. So I decided to kind of do that as best as I could here, because I decided to be a good control environment, because where I currently am is not known to be haunted, or at least it's not actively haunted. I always think of places as either haunted or actively haunted. I know some people will either say haunted or not, but I believe everywhere that's ever been touched by humans at all could have potential of being haunted, because I think all it takes is a human to just put their energy into something, and that could potentially lead them there in the afterlife. So as this place was not actively haunted, I was like, I wonder if I could do a 28-day cycle investigation, push it as much as possible, and see if this place becomes haunted. And it was also interesting because I kept in mind psychological impact and things like that as I was going with it, because I'm quite self-aware with these things. So I started off the investigation, and beforehand I was kind of warned by another team saying, oh, you're going to be absolutely knackered by the end of the 28 days. And I was confused. I was like, what? No, I probably won't be. I like staying up late, staying up till like 4 or 5 in the morning, no issue for me at all. And I'll just have a line the next day or whatever. It won't be an issue. But as the investigations went on, I did become more and more drained, which is an interesting result in itself. So when I investigated either at midnight or at 3 in the morning. If I was in work the next day, it would be midnight that I investigated, only for an hour. If I wasn't in work the next day, it would be 3 o'clock in the morning and for an hour. And so when investigating, I obviously had cat balls out, I had the bear out, I had a K2 meter, I had a Ouija board as well. So a big thing I wanted to test was the Ouija board across this, because I was aware I wasn't quite doing the proper 28-day cycle investigation. For that, you kind of have to be locked in the location and constantly investigating, whereas I wasn't. I was only doing an hour a day at kind of the spooky times of the day. So I was like, okay, to really push it then, I want to push the Ouija board, because that's something where either you don't believe it at all or you really do believe it. And I was like, nah, it's probably nothing. I've not seen anything in particular about this, like from my own experience. Although I did get interesting results one time at the house I grew up in. And so with the Ouija board, I set it up with candles around it, and I had a mirror out. This wasn't straight from day one. This is a couple of days in. I tweaked things to try and generate more activity. So I had a mirror in front of it, and then behind me was a big mirror. So I had both mirrors facing one another, because it's believed that if you have 2 mirrors facing one another, that it will create a portal. So I kind of had this Ouija board theoretically in the middle of this portal that was being created. And from there, whenever I used the Ouija board, I broke a number of rules with it. So didn't say goodbye, took my hand off the planchette, left the planchette on the board at all times, kind of thing. Removed the planchette from the board without saying goodbye, all sorts of things at all. Played it alone as well.
And you did this on purpose, right?
Yeah, on purpose,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And the playing it alone, I did because I wanted to test if that would. There's a thing called the ideomotor effect, which is subconscious movements. So that's the explanation of the planchette moving when you're using the Ouija board. It's your mind being tricked into subconsciously moving the planchette, because that's kind of what you're expecting. Mm-hmm. So I had a theory that if you play with multiple people, it is easier for the ideomotor effect to kick into gear. So I thought, by myself, that's not going to happen. I'm going to know if I'm moving it, because I'll be able to easily test it. Whereas if someone else was there, they may move it, and then that will just kick the ideomotor effect into gear, and none of us will know. We won't be able to replicate that kind of thing. And interestingly enough, there were times where I felt my arm relax. It did move the planchette. And I was like, okay, that's just my arm relaxing, even though the planchette has just moved. So I was investigating it, and again, as the 28 days continued, I have a book which lists, and I didn't mention this to you in the before, but I have a book that lists the names of many different demons, which are listed in books such as the Grand Grimoire. So I kind of mentioned this to you guys, but yeah. So when I was calling out to absolutely anything and everything, I was naming these things as well. So I was full on name by name saying, I invite such a thing into here, come and have a chat, that kind of thing, to see how much it would be pushed, and to see if anything would happen. And yeah, so continued. Not much happened as far as I can recall during investigations. There was a strange metallic tapping sound in one of them, which no idea what caused that, not heard it since. But aside from that, nothing really happened up until the end, which is when I'd stopped investigating. Because, I mean, it was roughly the 17th of October at this point. My birthday's on the 20th as well. So naturally, birthday celebrations did kind of take over at that point. But around that time, because I work in a shop, we had stock take, which starts at 6 in the morning. So my taxi to get there was about 5:30-ish in the morning, maybe 5. So investigation, because it was early start work, I was like, I may as well just do a 3 o'clock investigation for an hour. So I did that, and then so that finished about 4 o'clock. Got in the taxi about 5 o'clock, and then on the way to work, the taxi that I was in very, very nearly got hit by a tram, which was a bit of a shaky moment, because I was sat there in the tram oblivious, and then suddenly you just see sat there in the taxi rather oblivious, and then suddenly you see the white headlights of a tram and the loud horn of it beeping at you.
Yeah.
And everyone who was in the taxi at the time just kind of looked at each other and was like, my God, did you see, we nearly got hit by that tram kind of thing. So that kind of shut me up, because then I was like, oh no, I've just done an investigation where I was like inviting all these demons to come and have a party with me like an hour ago. So that's it, because people at work are interested in my investigations, and they knew I was doing the investigations, and I was just like, and afterwards when everything calmed down a bit, I was like, oh, like an hour ago, would you like to know something interesting? Like, yeah. And I was like, oh, an hour ago, I was calling out to all these demons and whatnot. And they're like, you were what? Just before we got in a taxi, you were calling out to all of this. And I was like, yeah, probably wasn't the best move, really.
My bad, sorry.
Yeah, pretty much. So that was very interesting. And yeah, because of the investigations I've done, and everyone at work knows that I push it with them, and it kind of led to a running joke of them thinking that I'm possessed and whatnot because of it. Because especially there was one time, which I can't remember whether or not I told you this last time I was on the podcast, but on one of the first times I used the Ouija board and used the Spirit Talker app with it, it was approaching 3:30 in the morning, and the Spirit Talker app, as I was using the Ouija board, listed out, hear my footsteps, followed by approach, then followed by the devil is here, pretty much bang on 3:30. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But then when I was telling people, but then when I was telling people at work this, I was sat in a staff room at the time, and the moment I said the devil is here, the light above my head started flickering. So everyone then just kind of took a step back and was like, yeah, are you sure you're not possessed, kind of thing. So I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm all fine. So
when you started the story with the Ouija board, I had wrote down this question to ask you, but I think you just did, but I wanted to bring it up anyway.
Okay.
Did you fear that you were going to stir something up that was maybe evil or demonic? And well, you just did. So
yeah, well, I didn't fear that I was going to, because at the time I was very much so like, nah, I don't think that exists. Like, I still even now am mostly sure that kind of stuff doesn't exist. And I do think that in terms of angelic and demonic, I think that they're misinterpreted. So I think that the angelic is just human spirits that work off a positive energy, and the demonic is human spirits which work off the negative, which is what we see in life. But with doing those investigations, it did push me a little bit more towards the what if I'm wrong though? Like, because at the end of the day, we don't know about any of it. It's all just guesswork. So I'm like, oh, I could very much so be wrong. So there was a time, another one where I was using the Ouija board and I caught a glimpse of a shadow behind me, which again, this isn't necessarily a it absolutely happened type thing, because you never know with these situations. Psychologically, you're doing a spooky thing in a dark room lit by candles, you might see stuff. But yeah, but I caught a glimpse of a shadow behind me, which was extremely tall and had a spike coming off of each shoulder. And I was really confused because I was like, that's very strange. And it looked like he was wearing a long coat. And I was like, that's really, really weird. So I was trying to Google what this thing could have been that I saw. And then it came up on Google Images with like pictures of demons, etc. And then it occurred to me that wings, if folded back, would resemble a big spike on each shoulder. So I was like, that's an interesting thing for me to have seen. So some strange things when using a Ouija board can happen, apparently. But whether or not they're just psychological or whether or not they are legitimate, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, me personally, and really, I've said this before. Me personally, I would just kind of stay away from them. But then that's the same thing as using a spirit box or something, asking spirits to come through that way. So I mean, yeah. Really, it's not terribly different, but I mean, it's still moving something that you're touching. So, yeah. So, are you going to get back into investigating this year?
I would like to. So I've said in one of the articles outlining plans for this year that if there's a fifth Friday in a month, then that will be a word list analysis. As for whether or not I actually create more word lists and do more investigations, it's something that I'd probably look more into, especially now that because I've got a new tablet, which is what I'm doing this on. So now that I've got that, it opens up opportunity for better quality live streaming, where I could potentially do investigations there. It kind of gives me another camera as well if I can find a different platform to stream on. Because obviously I want to try and have as many angles as possible of the room when doing investigations. Because last time I was doing investigations, I had two cameras. I had a tablet which was live streaming on Facebook, and I had a night vision camera. The Facebook one though was just pitch black screen because I was doing it in the dark with candlelight. So everyone on the Facebook Live was like, "What's going on? Why are you doing in the dark? I can't see anything." I was like, "Don't worry, I've got a night vision camera that will be uploaded to YouTube. The Facebook one is just so then there's live footage recorded. So if there's questions of the night vision footage, you can overlay both bits of footage to see the audio matches. So you'll see that nothing gets edited out." So I might do more investigations and things. We will see. I do have a friend as well who's very against my investigations because he very much so believes in all of the demonic, all the you will die if you investigate type stuff. So he's not best pleased with what I'm doing, but we will see. Depends on how the time goes with writing the articles because they take ages to write.
Judging by how long those articles are and how much research it looks like you put into it, they would take a long time.
Yeah,
and I mean, if go ahead, check out his every time I even think about putting it up, there's Pam with the link. So I appreciate you, Pam. Check it out. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, and it's not a quick read. It's a good read, but plan to spend a few minutes there reading his stuff, which is fascinating to me.
So let me jump in here while I can real quick. I know you've jumped into the paranormal pretty hot and heavy. I mean, and I love the approach you're doing because you're trying to debunk a lot of stuff that's happening, which needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if people will read your articles, they'll actually find themselves redoing a lot of stuff that they did. to double check themselves because of some of the problems that a lot of people have when they're doing investigations is they catch something that may be a little iffy, and it's like, well, it's there, and they convince themselves it's there. But they need to look at it from an objective standpoint. They need to be able to. You have to be able to be your worst critic. You have to, if it's not just right. I mean, if you can't show a picture or a video to somebody and they pick it out without you showing them what it is, I don't think it's really carries a lot of water. Okay. But my question is, and I know we're talking about the paranormal here, or ghost or whatever. Have you ever toyed with the idea of getting into the cryptid side of it?
That is a good question. So there are a couple of articles that I've done which are borderline towards cryptids. So the Wendigo is probably the closest that I've gotten to writing about cryptids. And it's something where it's interesting, but I know in America, well, I assume in America, cryptids are quite a big thing, I would assume. Here in the UK, they're not really that big, at least as far as I'm aware. Because the only cryptids I can think of, which is specific, which we know about here, general knowledge, is the Loch Ness Monster and the Beast of Bodmin Moor. That's pretty much the only things. And the Beast of Bodmin, I kind of touch on a little in the Jamaican article, because Jamaican is on Bodmin Moor, and there are rumors of this kind of ghost dog outside it, which it matches descriptions vaguely to the beast. But yeah, so the cryptids aren't really something that I'm intending on going into. But if there's cryptids out there which, like with the Wendigo, have a spirit link to them, so for instance with skinwalkers, that's something where I intend on writing about at some point, because I've seen them be compared to elementals, and there was an elemental, I think it's in Leap Castle in Ireland. I have written about them at some point, but because they were compared to one another, I'm like, I'm sure there are differences, and these people, they're saying that this is this other thing, and I don't think it is. So both of those will have to be covered, just to clarify what each one is and the spiritual connection kind of thing. But if there's anything out there which is like with Bigfoot, for instance, I likely would not write about Bigfoot unless there's some sort of spiritual connection that I'm unaware of, where people think that it's like a ghost of a caveman or something like that. Then that would be very interesting to write about. But otherwise, no, I would not get into the cryptids.
What about the Fae?
With the Fae, yes. So there are a number of articles, both location, and I've got a spirit type one as well, where it's delved into that. Because at first, when I thought about kind of fairies and whatnot, I was like, I'm not going to write about them. They're not spirit related. They're, just their own thing. They're kind of like cryptids. But then there are a couple of haunted locations where there are legends to do with it, there are myths to do with it, where they do talk about the Fae. So I was like, I'm gonna have to include that, because that is part of the mythology of this location and where rumors of the hauntings could have come from. And then I have written about the Banshee, because the Banshee is an Irish spirit, which I did not know at the time until researching it, but is linked to the Fae. And I can't remember the exact translation of the name, but the latter part of the name refers to the fairy mounds, I believe, where they kind of came from. There's also different interpretations and theories of the Banshee, but I think I concluded that article by saying I'm pretty sure it's just people being unaware of some of the weird noises wildlife can make in the forests. But yeah, anything which is related to spirits and the afterlife, I would absolutely cover. Yeah.
Because I mean, when we start talking, and we have a lot of conversations about the Fae, and Paul's been involved in them, and Monica's kind of our resident expert on the Fae, if you want to call it that. When you start talking about them, there's it's almost like there has to be a spiritual aspect to them for them to accomplish everything that they do. And there's so many different types, and of course, over there in the UK, then you've got Ireland and Scotland, which is just saturated with it. And I mean, start talking about leprechauns, brownies, the whole 9 yards, the gnomes, and you go, the Icelandic stuff really amazes me because they've actually built roads around places where these elves are supposed to live. That's taking stuff pretty seriously at a high level.
Yeah.
So that I'm pretty convinced that there's some legitimacy there. I don't know what it is, but it's just it's hard to just write off when you've got governments making roads around these areas. I mean, do you have any insight on that, or I mean, that type of culture? Because I know the Fae culture is pretty heavy in the UK and like I said, Ireland and Scotland. So, is it taken that seriously over there?
So in England, I would say not so much. In Ireland, through research in various places, etc., and Scotland as well, it definitely is. So I know because my girlfriend lives in Scotland, and she sent me pictures of these little fairy villages that people have built for fairies. And I was like, oh, that's really cool because we don't have that here. So yeah, even though the UK is a small place, there's very different cultures. So we don't really have the fairies here. But you have reminded me of another borderline cryptid that I have written about, which I only found out about because of the TV program Constantine. The TV program Constantine, which fictional program, supernatural, related to DC Comics. Really good program though, and one of the creatures of that program was the Coblini, which are Welsh in origin, I believe, but they are found across different cultures. So you've got them in Cornwall, Wales. They exist in America as well, when Cornish miners went over to America, and they're known as multiple things. So I believe in America they might be known as Tommyknockers. But they are spirits that inhabit mines and are thought to warn miners of danger. And the reason why they're borderline cryptids is because there is another interpretation that says that they're not spirits of miners who'd lost their lives in the mines, but rather they are kind of like these little gnome, dwarf type creatures that live in the mines, and you're best not to disturb them and things like that. Which again kind of links to that if you hear them at work, you're probably entering a dangerous place, and so you need to turn back. But yeah, so that's an example of kind of what you referred to there about how these kinds of myths and legends and stories can impact day-to-day life, because if the miners heard the knocking in the mines, they would straight away be like, oh, Coblini, right, they're warning us of danger, let's get out. So that's one way that they would amend what they were doing based on this spiritual belief. And there are places, I'm sure, I can't think of any specific ones that come to mind, but I'm sure there are places where that kind of thing has happened, where they've been built in particular places for particular reasons, or things like that. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that there is that cultural route to various places, and that's one of the interesting things about the paranormal, because if there was nothing to it, why do all of that? Why take that so seriously? It's like the law. I think it's a law that says that if you believe a property is haunted, you have to inform the not landowner, the owner of the
Right.
building, the estate agents. You know,
Right.
you
Right.
have to let them know, and that's a bizarre thing to have in place if it doesn't exist. Because otherwise, what's the risk? What's the issue if we're
Exactly.
hearing a few odd noises? It's like I know in America there are some places which are really strict about that, especially the Bible Belt area. Yeah, because I've written about. Go on.
I know that we do have some states over here in the U.S. that you have to, if you're selling your house, you have to say this house is haunted. I don't know if you have to say exactly, who's haunting it or what's the cause of it or anything. But I think that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, to go on these sites and say, "Oh, your house is haunted. Can I come over and roam around for a little bit?" That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one thing I'm thinking, the U.S. has great history here and a number of haunted houses or locations here. I would love, and I've been over to England before, but this was way 30, 40 years ago. 30 years ago, before I got into this stuff. I would love to just go over there and just find some places and just investigate. I mean, the history that you guys have over there is just fantastic.
Yeah,
and who knows what you would come across.
Exactly. You'll easily find so many places. It's like every time, because obviously I'm going with the locations off of where most haunted have been to, you don't have a clue how many places there are across England, because they've investigated predominantly England. Just that alone, there are so many everywhere. And the places a lot of time that I hadn't heard of before. And it's just bizarre. And some of the backstory, the histories to these places, it's like, I believe it might have been the Ostrich Inn. It's one of the inns that I've written about. But they've got a story which reminded me a lot of Sweeney Todd, with how there's a kind of lever in the chair and it drops him through a trapdoor kind of thing into a big boiling pot. And it reminded me of that because in the Ostrich Inn, or whichever inn it was, they had a routine, like the innkeepers, and this years ago when it wasn't like today. It was very kind of dirt tracks everywhere, very out in the wilderness, no one around, but you just have this inn as a nice little halfway stopping place to rest your horses and just have some food for the night and sleep. And the innkeepers there had a routine where they'd give them like free drink and a free meal, and they'd welcome them. And one of the innkeepers would then make a reference about a pig to the other one, which was a secret code word of kind of, is this one a target? And then depending on the other person's response, they would know yes or no. And then the innkeeper's wife would, after giving the visitor more drink, would lead them upstairs to their bedroom, and the person would then kind of pass out drunk in the bed. And the innkeepers would then rob them. And there was a mechanism in the bed of one of these places where it did dump them through a trap door into a big boiling pot. And then they would then dump the remains into a river somewhere, which was a bizarre thing to read about, because you're like, what, this actually happening? It's not like a castle or anywhere. It's just this random building, which is the equivalent of kind of early hotel or whatever, and they're just doing that to the customers and just robbing them. And it's baffling.
That's H.H. Holmes kind of stuff. That's kind of like the cross between H.H. Holmes and the Bender family. I mean,
yeah, it's bizarre to read about. It's like there is a castle, because when doing this research, I learned about oubliettes, I believe they're called, which are big pits, which the word apparently means to forget in French. And yeah, they'd have trapdoors which would lead down to this big pit. There'd be spikes at the bottom of this pit, and in castles, they'd just dump prisoners and random people they didn't like down this hole onto these spikes and just leave them there and just have a whole stack of bodies basically piling up in this pit. And it's just bizarre to think that happened.
Yeah. Wow. Got a quick question, or a couple questions here before we skedaddle here. I know you talked about it. I don't remember if you answered this one yet or not. Have you come across fairy rings?
I personally have not come across fairy rings, or at least not knowingly come across fairy rings. Because, like I say, in England, they're not something particularly discussed, or at least where I'm from in England, it's not particularly discussed. So yeah, I have not in England, but in Ireland and Scotland, maybe even Wales, they're probably a lot more commonly known about and encountered there.
Mm-hmm. And then getting back to our conversation on if this house is haunted when you're selling it or whatever, Pam put on here, looked at an inspection for a house my daughter was looking for. They only disclosed if someone was unalived, nothing about haunting. And I think that's pretty much state specific here in the United States. But it is pretty interesting. And I mean, if I were moving into or looking for a new house, I'd want to know if it's haunted or not, just for my own, something, what I do. But even if I didn't do this, I would, want to know if I'm going to hear footsteps or something odd at night.
So here's a question for you.
Yeah.
For both of you. If you were buying a house, okay, and you like both these houses equally, you're trying to go between them, right? One of them was claimed to be haunted and one of them was not. Which one would you buy?
I'd go for the haunted house.
Me too.
Absolutely. Yeah. You beat me to it. I was like, if anything, then listing it as being haunted, that's going to put me off. That's a selling point. That's got me hooked.
Yeah. I think I would too, but depending on, how, if it's really, really demonic or something, if it's something like, Uncle Leo is here or whatever, I think, I'd still get it, but I don't know if my wife and son would like it too much, but they don't, but yeah, I mean, this stuff is pretty interesting, Daniel, and I appreciate you coming on. And guys, seriously, go out and check his stuff out. It's on my Paranormal Among Us Facebook page, but something with just his stuff, which, I mean, there is a ton of stuff that he has, the True Paranormal .blogspot.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed going through all that stuff. And yeah, Daniel, I really appreciate you taking your evening now and chatting with us. It's been fun.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been really good.
Awesome. And
yeah, I want to get in touch with you because I'd like to have you over on my channel sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
I will. We'll talk after the show and stuff. So, so guys, we're at the hour mark. So, and usually this one goes about an hour. So, again, Daniel, thank you for coming on. I appreciate everybody for spending some of their Tuesday with us, whether you're at home doing whatever, or if you're at work listening. I certainly do appreciate you guys tuning in. So, Tex, what do you got going on the rest of this week? We got our show tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we've got our Waking Up Weird tomorrow morning, and then we've got I got Rob's show tomorrow afternoon. Then the girls are coming on, so
they'll be on Thursday. Yep. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of your week. I will
Monica's show Thursday night. Yeah.
Thursday nights. Yep. And then back here on Saturday night. Then you also have Rob Saturday late night. So, guys, I will see you in chat and other shows, I'm sure. But if not, we will see you right back here. And I just have to show this. Dario from Italy is here. I appreciate you coming in from Italy. Thank you so much, Dario, for showing up here. Yeah. So, all right, guys, have a great rest of your week. We will see you later. And let's hang on.
This is the future. Evolution. This future. Evolution.